Hello and welcome to our June webinar on contract redlining skills for in-house counsels in the age of AI, more human, less red lines, faster deals, presented by Contract Nerds and sponsored by Docusign. I'm Roma, your host and the new head of Contract Nerds. I'm also Senior Strategic Counsel at Docusign and the Contracts Queen. Before joining Contract Nerds, I was a tech entrepreneur, a general counsel, and a member and speaker of this wonderful community. I am honored to lead Contract Nerds and continue the excellent academic and social experiences of our beloved community. Contract Nerds is a blog, expert resource, and community dedicated to contracts professionals. Contract Nerds provides practical, relevant, and expert-driven content through our website, webinars, social media, and newsletter with over 25,000 subscribers. If you've not yet subscribed to our newsletter, please subscribe at the link in the chat so you can receive our weekly emails with tons of free content and training resources about contracts. I appreciate you for being here and for being a part of Contract Nerds community, which is a very special community because people join us from all over the world to share their knowledge and stories. So in the chat, please share your name, where you're logging in from, and your LinkedIn profile link if you'd like to make new connections. And I can see that many of you have already shared your name and where you're from and your location. So at this time, I would like to introduce you to the webinar today. Today's topic is contract redlining skills for in-house counsel in the age of AI. More human, less red lines, faster deals, with our amazing speakers, Neda Alnajafi and Nate Kostelnik. It brings me immense pleasure to introduce the accomplished experts joining us for today's webinar. Neda Alnajafi is an award-winning in-house attorney, author, and founder. Neda currently serves as Senior Corporate Counsel and Legal Ops Lead for Franklin Templeton, a Fortune 500 global financial services organization where she's building the first global legal ops program and negotiating high-impact technology and commercial deals. Neda is the author of Contract Redlining Etiquette and the founder of this wonderful community, Contract Nerds. Nate is an experienced business lawyer, consultant, and in-house legal ops expert. He has deep experience in working with a variety of contracts. Nate is the lead member of Contract Nerds Community Council, as well as Clock's Voice and Brand Council. He's also an author, having self-published the LLC Launchpad last year. His next book, Contract Redlining, is expected later this year. I think there might be a Christmas episode coming. Please refer to the webinar deck for more details on today's speakers. So before we start, I'd like to thank our parent company, Docusign, who has made it possible to bring this webinar to you for free. Here's a short video about Docusign's Intelligent Agreement Management, or IAM platform, designed to help organizations unlock the full value of their agreements.
Thank you so much, Roma. It feels so good to be back here in front of you all, and even better to have Roma as our new head of Contract Nerds. I'm so happy and delighted and so confident in everything that you're going to be doing for this community. Well, I'm very excited to be here to present on my favorite topic, as you all know, which is contract redlining. And I want to start with an observation that probably many of you have noticed as well. For most of my career, becoming a better contracts lawyer was pretty straightforward. You review more contracts, you negotiate more deals, you learn from your mistakes, and you gradually get better at providing your judgment over time. But today, something is a little different. Many of us now have access to tools that can review contracts, suggest red lines, compare language against playbooks, identify risks, and even draft explanatory comments. So the question isn't whether AI can help with contract redlining. We know it can. The question is, what happens when everyone has access to those same capabilities? Do negotiations actually move faster? Do better deals get done? Or do we simply generate more red lines? That's what Nate and I are going to explore today. We'll talk about what's changed and what hasn't in the world of contract redlining, where AI fits into the process, and what skills become more valuable when AI starts handling some of the mechanical aspects of contract redlining. And more importantly, we want to leave you today with something that you can take back and apply to your contract redlining workflow immediately. I'll be honest, AI is faster at redlining some contracts than I am, and I'm pretty fast. I've been doing this for 20 years. But generating red lines faster was never the goal. The goal was, and still is, to close deals faster. So as AI becomes better at generating red lines, the human skills required to close the deal become even more important. And that's what I mean by the redlining paradox. For those of you who are familiar with my book, Contract Redlining Etiquette, when the first edition came out in 2021, AI was not a part of the conversation at all. At the time, the greatest challenge I observed when it came to contract redlining was inefficiency. Everyone had their own way of redlining. Some would send locked PDF redlines. Some would comment in line with the text. Some would send their feedback in tables. And most were sending markups without any context or explanation. My goal with CRE was to create a practical set of best practices that would help lawyers and contracts professionals become more effective negotiators and communicators and get the deal closed faster. Since then, there has been an industry-wide movement towards CRE best practices. I'm seeing substantially less PDF redlines. More professionals know how to use Microsoft Word track changes. Explanatory comments are the norm now. And by far, the most popular legal memes are about red lines. I guess it's just something that we can all relate to. What's interesting is that even though the technology has changed dramatically in the last 5 years, the principles haven't. Transparency still matters. Collaboration still matters. Efficiency still matters. And trust matters even more than ever. Those skills are just as relevant in an AI-assisted workflow as they were in a fully manual workflow.
Thanks, Netta. I'll go ahead and hop in. As you mentioned, we've seen a lot of changes since AI has taken hold, and we're still seeing a lot of the pain points that we used to in the past. CRE has really advanced the cause, and as you said, people are now redlining with comments, explanatory comments, and moving deals forward and faster. But we're still seeing some of the same pain points. So go ahead, drop us in the chat, and let us know what your current pain points are now that you're seeing with AI. We know we have our favorites, PDF red lines. People are still sending formatting changes that aren't clean in the documents. We're still getting a ton of email back and forth without having human phone calls and Zoom calls. And we're still trying to solve the underlying issues of we're all drowning in contracts. We have too much volume. We're trying to get deals done faster. And we're trying to do our reviews with consistency and ensuring that we're protecting our clients. So with all of those as our current pain points and the ones that have been in our way, now we have a whole new set of new pain points, all because of AI. So we have tools that don't integrate with Word. So now we have some context switching where we're dealing with multiple apps. We have counterparties that are over-relying on AI. If you're on LinkedIn, you'll see posts where people will talk about new red lines that they're seeing where counterparties are just dumping AI red lines on them and just moving on. So we're seeing a lot more of that. It's leading to AI ping pong traps. I love that term, where we're looking at AI changes just going back and forth. And are we really advancing the deal at all? And with all of that, we're missing the human skills to close the deal. This is what CRE, contract redlining etiquette, has been all about, which is where can us as humans, where can we step in and help close that deal? And we're seeing with AI that maybe some people aren't really following through with that. And as a result, we're losing some trust, transparency, and collaboration. So I see a lot of great comments in the chat for problems that people are seeing with AI. And we're seeing it a lot more these days, and hopefully we can solve it. Go ahead, Roma, next slide. So one of the ways we can solve it is thinking about the human skills that we have that matter the most. And so when you think about the red lines, maybe more substantively, there's still something outside of that. There's still something on top of that that makes us irreplaceable. And it comes back to the standards we always have: judgment, context, and tone. If you're seeing red line changes that AI is suggesting, it's not going to make the final call. That's up to us. That's up to us to be the ones either negotiating with the counterparties or internally with our business stakeholders to say, this is what AI is suggesting, but ultimately, I don't think this is a big risk, or this may be too big of a risk for us to think about. It's having that tone and that context to present those changes in a way that you can move forward. It's understanding the relationships with your counterparties in a way that AI may not know. You may have a deal with maybe the CEO's best friend. AI isn't going to capture that, but you know that deal may be a bit more of a priority. And lastly, accountability. Ultimately, it always comes back to us. We're the ones that are signing off on everything. We can't push it aside and blame AI. You see what happens in litigation, where lawyers are getting sanctioned for trying to ignore some of their responsibilities. We can't do that in the contracting space. We have to be the ones to take accountability for the changes. And obviously why that matters now, the human touch is really what's going to help us move forward. AI is really changing what we're going to be doing, but the underlying principles of contract redlining etiquette are still going to help us move forward. Thanks, Roma.
Thanks, Nate. So the question I've been getting is, how do we actually use AI with redlining? And my answer is with Oreo cookies. I've developed a method called the Oreo cookie method, and every time I talk about it, I think about Oreo cookies. So I decided to Instacart some to myself today, and that the 3 people who win a copy of my book, I'll send you some Oreo cookies also, because you'll be thinking about it and then you'll get hungry. Now, when we answer the question of how do we actually use AI with redlining, most people are expecting me to talk about prompts or vendors or tools. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. The answer is much simple. It's process, the same as it has always been. Good outcomes rarely come from good technology alone. They come from good technology plus good workflows and excellent contract experts running them. And that's what led me to develop what I call the Oreo cookie method, where the attorney goes first, the attorney goes last, and then the AI works in between, like the cream filling that's nice to have, but not necessary in the middle. Let me show you how it works step by step. So the first step is the attorney review. Before AI touches the contract, you need to read the agreement yourself from beginning to end, just like you normally would before you dive into actual redlining. You want to understand the transaction, the business objectives, the relationship between the parties, who has the leverage, what's the timeline, and what does success look like to your business client? Because AI can help you review the contract, but it can't tell you what matters most to the business. So before you even use AI, get to know the agreement as you normally would and the parties involved. Then we get into the AI review piece. I like to layer in the way that I use AI to help me redline the same way that I have layered reviews when I'm manually redlining. I'll usually start reviewing from top to bottom and skim for the large issues, get familiar with the agreement itself. And then I'll do a general review where I start going in and putting my red lines. And then I'll do a more surgical, specific review of certain very important clauses where I'll go even deeper on them. and then I'll do some cleanup. So I do the same process with AI. Whether you're using an AI redlining tool or a general LLM, you'll likely be able to use the AI in multiple layers just like this. Then at the very end, the attorney review. This is non-negotiable. The attorney, the contract expert, the contract manager, the contract admin, the procurement professional, whoever is responsible for that agreement has to review it at the end, from beginning to end. And I don't mean skim it or skip some of the parts that you think are no biggie. I mean actually read it. Read the markups, read the explanatory comments, make sure they make sense. Make sure they're refined to fit the context and to fit the goals. AI tends to, be on the safer side and spot every single risk that it thinks is there. But that doesn't mean that you need to pass all those markups through. Are you sure that you need to tweak that clause that way? Is it more stylistic? Is it really important enough to bring up to the other party, or do you want to focus in on maybe 2, 3 of the more important clauses? It depends on your leverage. It depends on your timing. It depends on the other party's appetite for redlining. And of course, what's going on with the deal. Now, over time, it's very expected that we will become naturally more comfortable with these tools. And as our trust for AI increases, there will be a temptation. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's subconscious or unconscious, to defer to the AI's conclusions. But I want to urge you to resist that temptation. The final review still belongs to you. And by the way, the final review isn't just a best practice. It's also consistent with our professional responsibilities as attorneys. We know that under the rules of professional conduct, we have duties of competence and responsibilities relating to the legal services we provide. And those obligations don't disappear because technology is involved. Regardless of how much AI assists with the review process, we're still responsible for the final work product. That's why I think it's so important to view AI as a tool that supports the redlining process rather than a substitute for legal judgment. It's also important to keep in mind that AI companies will expressly disclaim accuracy of the output. I was having a conversation with a legal leader who was early on in his AI journey, and he said he refused to use an AI tool unless it was 100% accurate, and that the accuracy responsibility was on the vendor. But that's not today's reality. Perhaps it will be one day in the future. But today, vendors expressly disclaim accuracy of the output, and the red lines and the markups and the explanatory comments are the output. Even if the vendor agreement puts onus, even the vendor agreement puts onus of the final red lines onto us. And that's okay. That's what we're here for. AI can help you create better red lines, but it still takes an attorney or a contracts professional to close the deal. Now that we've talked about where AI fits into the workflow, let's talk about the tools themselves and what Nate and I have learned from evaluating and implementing them.
So we're going to talk about AI's role based on what it does really well and what it doesn't do so well. And part of the efficient way to use AI is to understand its capabilities and its limitations. So on our next slide, we're going to talk about some of the ideas of what AI does well. And I think that Netta's point about the Oreo cookie method is a great way to think about this. I would be able to present on that. I ordered Oreos as well. I happened to eat all of them before this presentation, so I can't talk about it, unfortunately. But it's a great way to think about what AI does well, which is recognizing patterns from a large volume of contracts, benchmarking certain clauses that you may be looking for in that all that volume of contracts, looking for alternative language, flagging risk, and accelerating first pass and final pass review. So an example here, we're seeing a lot of people talk about NDAs. It's our favorite type of document we love to talk about. But we're seeing some more people talk about new clauses that are getting inserted about AI and whether confidential information can be put into an AI tool. One thing you can do is scan your contracts using AI and see look for that pattern. Are you seeing a lot more of NDAs having that type of clause? Benchmark those new clauses that you're seeing. What types of risks and responsibilities are those new clauses imposing on you or looking to enforce? Are some of those clauses, is there an alternative that might be a little more palatable or not as onerous? Some of those clauses will prevent you from using any type of AI review, which a lot of companies aren't really doing. They can't comply with that. On the other hand, some of those clauses are also talking about what you can do with confidential information and AI review, and that's too risky. And so you can use your AI to flag those as risks. And then operationally, as Netta kind of alluded to with the Oreo cookie method, it's really great for first pass review and also final pass review for maybe final cleanup, seeing if your section headers and everything match up. But on the other hand, as we alluded to before, there's still a lot that AI can't do. Judgment, someone's going to have to make the final call on some of those red lines. It's not going to be AI. Who's going to read those relationships with your counterparties? Is it a valued customer? Is it a new critical customer and a new market you're really trying to get headway into? AI is not going to be the one to know that. That's on you. Who's going to be the one to weigh that business context? Again, AI is not at the point yet where it's going to surface that. And again, one of the themes that we've touched on before is the accountability component. That's on us as the human reviewers, not AI. I think we have a poll coming up.
Yes, we do. All right, everyone. It's time for your first poll. Are you using AI to redline contracts today? I'm gonna guess. I have this habit. If I watch a mystery movie, I have to start guessing what happened. And I have an idea, but let's see if I'm right or wrong. And I'll tell you that at the end. All right. Okay, look at that. Lots of responses. That's good.
Yes,
Keep them coming. Keep them coming. This is great.
I was guessing for 75% yeses.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get there.
Wow. I'm loving some of the comments there. To go with it. I'm gonna have a little chat with some of these people with their sentiments towards AI afterwards.
Wow.
Wow, look at that. Okay, so the results are here. It seems, oh, can I share the results? Is that okay? Okay, the results are here. It is 64% yes and 36% no. I have to say I'm impressed because I thought it was going to be majority or 50-50 yes or no. So I'm really happy to hear that most people are beginning to use AI for redlining. That's very good. All right.
That's
Okay.
about what I was expecting. And if you're saying no, I would love to hear in the comments why you haven't started yet. Is it a budget issue? Is it some kind of, fear, trust, concerns or anything like that? And hopefully throughout the rest of this webinar, we can, help relieve some of those fears and get you started on your journey.
All right. Well, I think we can get back to the course again.
So one of the questions we always get, and I think we'll have a few coming in towards the end, is how do I even get started with choosing an AI redlining tool? There are tons of them out there. We have the general purpose models, Claude, ChatGPT, which is what most people are familiar with. We have AI redlining tools themselves in kind of the legal tech space, the point solutions. And then we have the CLM platforms. And obviously, even though those are nice boxes on the slides, we are seeing some overlap and there's a lot of blending there. So we'll see how that moves forward in the next few months. Some general ideas, I think, that we'll have. Netta's going to dive into this a little bit more. For me, I think you have to have integration with Word. As contract pros, we're always working with contracts in Word. That's what we've grown up with. If you don't have that Word integration, I think you're probably missing something there. So that's probably non-negotiable. Understanding your use cases. Is this something you're going to use on your own, or are you going to maybe delegate some of these reviews supported by AI to maybe your business team? That kind of changes some of the questions you want to ask. Looking beyond just the markup features. Again, is this maybe a enterprise-wide tool, or are you looking for features other than the markups? Is it maybe some of the more CLM popular features that we have there? And then the last one that's really important is you really have to try it out. Netta has done a ton of this, but really try it out and find out what you're comfortable with, what you like, what red lines seem like you, and what ones don't. You won't know until you maybe give it a demo. Netta, what do you think?
I agree. And I would even second what you said about Microsoft Word. I will not use a redlining tool if it does not have a Word plugin and integrate with Microsoft Word track changes, because that is the core baseline foundation level requirement for contract redlining. And I don't think that we should be using AI to make us more efficient in one area and then less efficient in another area where we're spending a ton of time, again, fixing formatting, copy pasting, context switching, losing track of where we were. And I just found that that was really taking us towards the less efficient route instead of the more efficient route. So number one, you need to have Microsoft Word integration. I actually, last summer, I did an evaluation that I've written about. I evaluated 12 different AI redlining tools, and I don't recommend doing this at home. I did that many purely because I wanted to research and write about it and help teach and educate all of you. But I evaluated 12 tools. Some of them were general purpose LLMs. Most of them were standalone AI redlining tools. And then I included a couple CLM platforms that also had pretty good advanced AI redlining native features. And what I did first was I built a requirements list. And in the chat, we're going to share my article on how to select an AI redlining tool. And in that article is a link to my requirements list. So it's a good place for you all to get started. I built the requirements list, though, by first figuring out what the problem was with contract redlinings for my legal department. And then I created the requirements list, and then I took that out and I started scheduling demos. And I did all the demos within a 4-week time span because I wanted them to be all close to each other because AI changes so quickly. I wanted as best as I could to compare apples to apples in real time. And I sent what I was looking for and what I wanted to see in the demo to each of the vendors ahead of time so that they could customize their presentation to what I was looking for. I found that that was a really helpful use of all of our time. And then I just graded each of the tools against the requirements list I had. And what I found was that most of the AI redlining tools kind of do the same thing, where they can do the markups pretty well. They have some sort of explanatory comment. They do issue spotting, really well. And all the ones I looked at had a Word plugin, or otherwise I wasn't going to include them on my list. So what I began asking myself and really looking for is what were the market differentiators? What really stood out and made one vendor more optimal for me versus another? And here are some of the things that I found that kind of stood out. Number one that was most important to me was having customer support, where the vendor actually had legal engineers that would help support the playbook build process. Building playbooks was important to me. That was something that I wanted to do, and I'll share my story about that in a few minutes also. And so because I knew I wanted to create robust playbooks off of our contract templates, I loved that some of the vendors offered support. That made them a little more expensive, but to me, it was worth it. Another one was the quality and the humanization of the explanatory comments and some of the negotiation support features. Of course, I was honing in on that. So if it was an explanatory comment that just sounded robotic and it sounded like AI had written it, and otherwise I'd have to just rewrite it myself, that wasn't something really that I wanted to use, whereas I did find tools that had more humanized explanatory comments. There are so many other features that go with redlining, and as you start to demo, you'll start to see and feel the ones that work for you. A lot of people are asking me to share which tool I selected, and I can't. I'm not allowed to, but I don't think it matters what tool I selected. I think it matters more what tool is best for you, and that depends on your problems. Demo and test against your requirements, and select the vendor that you feel will be a good partner for you during a time of very heavy change, because you're going to need them to be a partner with you. What you're doing today with AI is going to be different than what we're doing with AI a year from now. So make sure you have that relationship side. Nate, what I know you're evaluating a lot of these tools also. What are you seeing as like the market differentiators?
Yeah, I think to your point, one of the ones I look for is we have it on the slide there for the quality of the red lines and looking for surgical red lines as opposed to wholesale clause replacements. The more narrow and targeted you can get a red line from AI, the better. It's easy to just reinsert a whole new clause, but those can be pretty big, and it looks like a lot of red when your counterparty sees it. So the more surgical you can get your red lines to be, the better.
Absolutely agree. I look for tools that are already following contract redlining etiquette best practices and helping us, move towards even more best practices, close deals faster, more negotiation support, more collaboration. The ones that I don't like are the ones that don't get the formatting right because they don't have good word integration, or the comments don't sound human, or the markups are not able to read. Like if one party is called company, or they're called vendor, or they're called party one, some tools get it really well where they can tell the difference and they can apply it. So the AI is adaptable enough and flexible enough to really do smart redlining as opposed to just the basics. So I am a big proponent of including your legal users in the implementation of your AI redlining tool. Now, 5 years ago, the focus was all about CLM. One of the challenges with CLM was that it required a heavy tech implementation phase. With these AI redlining tools, you can literally just log in and turn them on in seconds. There's no technology or technical implementation needed if it's a word plugin. Okay, but what replaces that is the legal subject matter expertise implementation, the specific focused training that you do of the AI tool to build the playbook, to build the agents, and to make sure that it's providing output that you and your team will trust. I created a system where I incorporated the legal users, the attorneys, and the experts from our team into the playbook build process. So, for example, one of the first things I wanted to do was relieve some bottlenecks in the contract redlining process. And one of the contracts that was creating a bottleneck was data processing addendums, because our amazing friends over at Privacy didn't have all of the resources to help review the very high volume of data processing addendums that were coming through. And so their review time was getting a bit slower, a bit too slow for what the business was looking for. And we, being a good legal partner, we wanted to come in and help. So I said, hey, we're going to help you. We're going to take some of those DPA reviews off your plate. The legal team's going to handle them more autonomously if you give us one resource and 2 weeks of your time to help us build the DPA playbook. And so we built a project team for the DPA playbook that included the legal subject matter expert, the privacy subject matter expert, and our amazing vendor support, which was a legal engineer who just specialized in building playbooks, but was also an attorney, so really could help us finesse the rules and the language for some of those technical requirements. And a couple weeks later, and I counted a total of 36 hours later of group expertise time building the playbook, we had our DPA playbook. And it worked just as it was designed to. Now the legal team is able to have more autonomy. We're able to handle the DPAs without having to go to privacy so much. And it significantly reduced the volume of reviews that the privacy team needs to do for DPAs. Now you might be thinking, wow, 36 hours, that's a lot of time. It is a lot of time. I absolutely agree. But the time invested upfront is what saves the time later. If we were just to use an out-of-the-box playbook that, let's say, the vendor provided, or I bought online, or a consultant did for me, I don't think the trust would be there with the legal users. Lawyers are used to storing the knowledge and information in our own heads. And each of us kind of have our own style and our own way of measuring risk. And the whole, point of AI and one of the things that can benefit is to create standardization, but that muscle still needs to be exercised. So when you bring the lawyers and the legal users into the build and implementation process, they're building with their own knowledge, with their own information and their own experience that they already trust. So I would much rather use a playbook that I built from what I know than use a playbook that someone else built and I don't know why they built it that way or what's, what are the fallback positions behind it, and there's less familiarity. So my theory, and so far it's working, is that the more involved your legal users are in playbook build and implementation of an AI tool, the more likely they are to use it and to adopt it and to trust it, which is really, really key with this big change management process that we're all in right now. Nate, I'm curious to hear your thoughts too on playbooks.
Yeah, I think as you said, the time up front, 36 hours seems like a lot of time, and it definitely is. But the value that you get from spending that time is that the thought you put into it and deciding what clauses you care about, which ones you don't, what's important to a certain stakeholder internally, and what isn't. AI can help you scale that every time a contract is reviewed. So you get not just that time savings, but you also get consistency too. So you know that that position is reflected well each time a contract is reviewed.
Yes. And I would like to share another statistic. So I would measure how long it would take a lawyer to review a contract and then how long it would take them to review it using a custom built playbook with the AI redlining tool. And the reduction was about 50% of time that was reduced. Not just that, it's not just the individual's time spent redlining, but it's also the amount of time in days and back and forth emails to engage another internal party, to engage a subject matter expert, to then have back and forth conversations or to keep following up or chasing. And the fact that you're able to have one person doing it with the playbook means that it's going to happen a lot faster. And you can do a similar model for business self-service, which is where I'm seeing really this going to, is having more business side or procurement side self-service agreements under a similar model. And AI tools are starting to come out with more of those guardrails also to make sure that there's that trust between legal and the different business departments. So also, as we start incorporating AI into our workflows, it's important that we don't want to let technology pull us away from the redlining best practices that we've been spending years developing. I've touched on this a little bit, but I just want to reiterate that many of these tools are already very useful, but they're not all the way there yet, and they're going to continue to develop. And one of the areas that I think they can continue developing in is with regard to process and workflow, and making sure that the human user and the tool are working together and collaborating together in a way to make both of what they have to offer as powerful as possible. Like, one mistake I see is, of course, reviewing the contract only after running AI. We are not AI output approvers. We are the experts using AI as our tool. Again, you need the context to review before, not after, because even if you're just using an AI prompt in a general LLM like ChatGPT, you want to feed it some context with your initial prompt before it does its review. The second mistake I'm seeing is treating the AI output as the final work product. Just because the AI said it's right or the AI said that you should mark it up doesn't mean that you should. Do you have time? Do you have the leverage? Does it make sense in the overall context? What does the master agreement that it attaches to say? Are the defined terms consistent throughout? These are things that you'll have to review. So trust it, but verify, just like we say for when we're doing doc comparisons. Trust, but verify. A third mistake I see is accepting AI-generated comments without revising them. Now, most tools have very robotic sounding explanatory comments. They can be technically correct in that they are describing the change happening. We are changing this clause by increasing the limitation of liability cap. Okay, but why are you doing that? And why are you proposing it? And why should I accept it? You have to convince me. And so if they're not including the why, you need to tweak it, make sure the comment's persuasive. We're going to talk a lot more about comments in a minute. And also, you don't want to assume that AI understands the broader business context. And lastly, don't redline outside the four corners of the document. If you're using an LLM, I just tested ChatGPT yesterday. ChatGPT still cannot redline, provide inline markups in word track changes format. It provides a separate document that has a list of the changes with add or delete. And you shouldn't be sending that document or copy pasting those changes into a comment. You should be using it as a tool and then incorporating it into your regular redlining workflow and best practices. All right. So now let's get into explanatory comments. It's one of the most underutilized negotiation tools in contract redlining. When I teach contract redlining, I often remind people that redlining isn't just marking up the document. It's the markup and the explanatory comment that goes with it. The red line tells the other side what you're asking them to change, and the comment helps persuade them to accept it. That's an important distinction. And lately, I've been seeing some comments coming up that are not really following best practices. And so we just want to reiterate, we always want to accompany red lines with our explanatory comments. What makes a good comment? It should have clarity in what you're asking for. It should explain the reasoning, not just what you're changing, but the why. Your tone should be professional and confident. You want to have strategic framing, so make sure that the context is there and the location of the comment goes in the margins, not in line or not in a different document. Here are some real life examples of red lines and comments that I've just seen this past week that we don't want to do. Like this one here, I left a comment about that we can't agree to indirect damages waivers in an NDA, and then the counterparty saying, well, it's company policy to have it in our NDAs. We don't want to do company policy. We also don't want to say because AI told us so. I have a few other examples here that we'll share in the deck with you all afterwards. And we've talked a little bit also about what AI gets wrong here. So I want to show you this example that Nate put together of an AI generated comment versus an AI crafted comment.
Yeah, thanks, Netta. So the slide, we should have done it so that you would have to guess which one was AI generated and which one was attorney crafted. But the comment on the left, as Netta said, is very generic. It really doesn't give you a why, and it doesn't really do anything to move the contract forward. On the other hand, we have the contract on the right that thinks about both parties' perspectives. It offers a why, and it gives a little bit more perspective as to why we're making the request, as opposed to the last sentence we have in the comment on the left, the clause has been revised. Doesn't give you anything to move forward with. And we have a bunch more of good versus bad comments just like this in one of the handouts that I think is a freebie after the show. So watch out for that too. All right, so we're going to talk about human red lines. We've talked a lot about what AI does and what it can't do, but this is really our time to shine, which is finding a way for our comments to appear more human and be more human and really drive the deal forward by delivering on trust, collaboration, and transparency. So on my next slide, I have this chart that talks about what AI does really well, which is it can comment and redline for volume, for speed and consistency, but what it can't really deliver on is trust, transparency, and collaboration. And so that's where we as the humans need to step in. So what we have are 4 tips, and there are 10 of these in the handout, but these are 4 ways that we can make our comments be more human and really show that there's a human on the other side of the contract and deliver on that trust and collaboration. So one technique is called the Ben Franklin technique. And the idea here is Ben Franklin once had a political rival, and he could never really break the ice until he realized he asked his rival to borrow a book. And what happened was that his rival all of a sudden became his friend. And that seems like such a simple request, but the idea is that when you ask somebody for a small favor, it makes them like you more. And so one thing that I've done is, you don't even have to make any red lines for this, but I will highlight the title of the document and make a red line comment asking our counterparty for a small favor. Hey, please check my auto numbering when you're done reviewing. I think maybe it got messed up in the red lines. Not asking them to do a lot, but this is the first red line they're going to see when they look at your red lines. and it's a small request, and it gets them on your side because you're asking them for a small favor that they can comply with and do, and it helps build some trust. Another technique I have is giving permission to say no. It's counterintuitive, but when you tell somebody that they can push back or say no, sometimes that actually leads to them saying yes. And so here's a red line comment where we just struck the word improve. We don't want our vendor to use our data to improve on their services. So we have a comment, hey, vendor, feel free to push back on this, but without this edit, it seems like you have a right to use our data. Again, this isn't necessarily going to win the day, but even opening the door to saying that they can push back sometimes leads them to accept your edit without any further pushback. The next one I have is tip number 3. I'm really curious about this. It's the unsolicited compliment. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I think it's a great way to drive negotiations forward and show that there's a human on the other side. Without making any red lines at all, just tell your counterparty, hey, this is a good position. We have to ask for this a lot. We really appreciate that you as a vendor are taking this position up front without making us have to redline it and ask for it. And this also has the effect of smoothing the way for maybe what your next red line may be sequentially, where now you've talked about your counterparty as being somebody who's reasonable and taking a reasonable position, so that when you get to a real request coming up later, you have a little bit more rapport there. So let me pause for our poll. I'm really curious about this. Does anybody else give their counterparties any compliments?
Wow, look at that.
Like,
we have a very polite society here.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I feel bad for the people who say all their counterparties have been mean and awful. I'm sorry. What practice area do you work in? Because
at least it's a very like small minority, like a very small minority, hopefully.
All right. And then let me go ahead and hit our last tip. Again, we have 10 of these in the handout. But our fourth one is called the Pygmalion effect, which is the idea that people value what they create. And this is Legos. This is why Legos are popular. If you build it, you love it. And we can see this when you have a really long clause, limitation liability. And we're always tempted to insert exceptions throughout, except for parties' gross negligence. And then you have to insert that clause over and over again. Well, those red lines can build up. And because the counterparty is going to look at that, hey, this is our clause. Now you're making all sorts of red lines to it. One thing to consider is, can you insert a clause elsewhere that achieves the same effect without adding a lot of red lines? And so one of the ways to do that is adding a standalone exceptions clause that covers the same ground, but isn't all of those red lines throughout the paragraph that makes it look like you're really redlining the clause that the other party may have drafted on their own and loves. So that may be one way to achieve the same effect. And one of the ways we did this is we had a Redline Rumble at one of the Contract Nerds events recently. And we had 2 sample red lines. And the team that won actually had the fewer red lines. And so that may have been one way that we got the Pygmalion effect there, where the other team had a lot of red lines, and maybe that weren't as popular as the team that had the fewer red lines. So Redline Rumble, hopefully we'll see some more coming up.
This game was so fun, and it was just so telling how quickly people voted for your team's red lines, Nate, because even people standing far away are just like, I'm going to vote for the one with less red lines. So there was definitely a psychology aspect to it. And folks who haven't attended our live events, there's one coming up in Boston in October. So follow us on LinkedIn to be sure to hear more about that. All right, so we're at our final topic, which is live negotiation calls. Throughout today's presentation, we focused on negotiating through red lines and explanatory comments. You make a proposal, the other side responds, and then the discussion moves forward one draft at a time. Well, at some point, many negotiations reach a stage where communication has done its job, the issues are clear, both sides understand each other's positions, and another round of comments is unlikely to move the negotiation forward. That's where live negotiation calls come in. And I think this is one of the most valuable skills an in-house attorney can develop today. And it's also one that many attorneys avoid because it's outside their comfort zone. It's much easier to send another email than it is to pick up the phone. But if your goal is to close deals efficiently, learning when and how to transition from an asynchronous negotiation to a synchronous one is a skill that's worth developing. AI can help us prepare for these conversations, but it cannot replace them. It cannot pick up the phone and close the deal for you. The conversation itself still depends on the attorney's ability to communicate, build trust, solve problems, persuade, and move the deal forward in real time. Rule number 3 from contract redlining etiquette is to exchange red lines via email once and then switch to live negotiations. Of course, there are exceptions to this. I'm not suggesting every agreement requires a call after one round of red lines, but the point is to be intentional about when you change communication methods. Email is a fantastic tool. It creates a written record, it gives both parties time to think, and it allows you to carefully craft your response. That's exactly why we start there. But every communication method has its strengths and limitations. If you've exchanged 1 or 2 drafts and you're still making progress, keep going. Sometimes you get into the groove. Sometimes you get into a nice flow where you and the counterparty are just like going back and forth and you have a nice game going between you. But if that's not happening, the other party is not cooperating, their responses are taking a really long time, the comments are getting longer, the same issues keep coming back around without meaningful movement, then that's probably a good signal that you should switch to a live negotiation call. And I encourage you at that point to ask yourself a question. What am I hoping to accomplish with another email that I can't do in a 15-minute call? And sometimes there's a good answer, but if there isn't, I recommend starting to schedule that meeting. We do have a quick poll that we'd like to launch to see how many email exchanges you usually have before you schedule a live call. I'd love to hear from you all. Is it 1, like the rule says? Do you usually wait a couple more? All right. Okay. So yeah, we're seeing the results coming in. Most people wait to schedule a call until 3 or more rounds of exchanges have passed through. I get it. That's a very common response. That's reflective of what I'm seeing out there too. I would challenge you and encourage you to try to schedule a call sooner. This is really a big area that differentiates us, the human expert, from what AI can do. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it and how we can really build up and master those skills to get us comfortable. So the mode of communication, again, we want to be intentional. When email works well, use it. Phone calls are good when the issues have become nuanced or you don't need a whole bunch of people. It's just you and counsel. Hey, I have a quick call. Video calls are helpful where you have business parties, you have legal on, you have subject matter experts, and it really does require a group think session to close out the items. So we've talked about the signals already. Okay, so how do we actually get ready for the call? If you read the work of negotiation experts like Roger Fisher, William Ury, or Chris Voss, you'll notice a common theme. They each teach different negotiation techniques, but they all emphasize the importance of preparation. The quality of your preparation has an enormous impact on the quality of the negotiation. So occasionally a negotiation call starts with someone saying, I haven't had a chance to review the latest draft yet. Well, we've all been there. Calendars get full, priorities shift, and a meeting comes sooner than we like. But when someone says that to me, it immediately changes the dynamics of the negotiation. Because I'm a negotiation expert, I look for these subtle cues that help give me more leverage than the other party. The party who prepared walks into the conversation with confidence. They know the issues. They've already thought through the counter arguments, and they know where they have flexibility. But the party who hasn't prepared is reacting in real time. They're playing catch up during the call. And that definitely changes how much strength and value they can bring to the table. So to prepare for a negotiation call, it is so important to block time immediately before the call. So if I have an external negotiation call at 12 p.m. my time, I will block off 11 to 12 on my calendar and just use that time to prepare for the negotiation. That includes reading the latest set of red lines, reading any other documents that attach to it or that it may attach to, going through the latest email threads, and even I might include an internal business meeting where I meet with my internal business client to get aligned on a few things. How much do you want me to push here? Are you okay with accepting this risk if we have to? And really just all getting aligned. Running the call itself. So the first thing I recommend is setting yourself up for success before anyone joins the meeting. Get your screens and your technology ready. So always have two screens. One screen is dedicated to the redline draft that you're sharing and working through. And that's the one that I'll share. And I'll only share that particular Word document, not anything else, because I know there's a lot of concerns about like privacy and confidentiality. So have the draft ready that you're okay with sharing. And then on the other screen are my notes, maybe some like AI summaries and things like that, or even like past documents or past email threads. And what I also like to do is open up a Teams chat that with my internal business clients that we can connect on. So if I want them to chime in, I'll say, hey, can you support me with this? Or I'll ask them, should I keep pushing here or should I, pull back a little bit? And we'll stay connected there. So we're not doing it on the call in front of everybody else. It's really important to look very synced up and very prepared in front of the counterparty so that whatever you do ask for comes off with confidence and that you're reasonable and that you're being thoughtful about it. I like to lead the conversation, but not everybody has to. You don't have to lead the conversation to have a successful negotiation. You just have to be prepared for it. But I like to lead the conversation, pull up the document and screen share myself, and even do a live co-drafting session. So I'll share the draft, and if we have a clause, let's say it's a limitation of liability clause, and we keep going back and forth, I'll pull it up and we'll say, okay, help me understand exactly what the issue here, or what's the concern here. And we'll talk a little bit, and then I'll say, okay, what if we tweaked it like this? And I'll start to type it so that everybody can see. And then they'll give live feedback. Now, sometimes the counterparty is not comfortable with that, and they'll say, I have to take it and review it internally and get back to you. That's absolutely fine. But sometimes, a lot of the times, they will engage with you. They'll jump in, they'll roll up their sleeves, and they'll say, can you add the comma here? Can you flip that word around and move it here? And you're doing something incredible together. You're redlining together. I cannot explain, if you haven't experienced this, how powerful and how fun it is to do this. And it's a muscle that the more you exercise it and the more you practice it, the better that you will get. What's also important here is that you're able to make the decision in real time. If you have the decision-making capability, that's great. If you don't, you can either invite the decision maker to the call, or you can prep ahead of time with the decision maker and say, I'd really love to be empowered in this next call. I just want to be sure, is it okay if they say no to this? Can I agree to this fallback language and get their pre-approval upfront so that on the call, you're the decision maker and you're making things happen in real time. After the call, close the loop, send a summary email, send your red lines. Don't wait long. I like to do it right after. So if you can, also block off maybe 20 or 30 minutes right after the call to finish your red lines, do the cleanup work while it's fresh in your head. Here's a sample of note-taking that I actually do during the call, and I'll keep it in my red lines when I send it out because it keeps a record of the decisions and the action items that were made during the call, and it continues to follow it through. There's a few ways you can use AI to support the negotiation call. You can do business summaries for your stakeholders. You can create a negotiation prep table, which is a great way to get more comfortable with live negotiations. You can use an AI transcript, and I've even included a companion resource that has example prompts and templates of ways you can use AI to support you during the negotiation call.
Well, I don't know about anybody else in the comments. I don't think I'm alone on this one, but Netta, hearing how you have multiple screens with internal comments, external comments, a Teams window, I'm terrified. That is a lot of tech for me. I will do negotiation calls, but I am something that holds me back is live code drafting, and I don't know if I'm alone on that one. Reading some of the comments, so I do think that it's a very productive way to move forward. And so I volunteered to do this slide to talk about how to get over some of those fears. Are you going to say something silly? Are you going to look weak? Are you going to get steamrolled in the negotiations? Are you going to forget something? The big one for me is my tech set up right? I'm going to share something I'm not supposed to. I'm going to forget something. So I'm always afraid of doing that. I don't mind the negotiation, but there's everything else going on. So, and then when we talk about real-time code drafting, that's something for me. I don't know if I'm there yet. So I wanted to talk about some ways to overcome those concerns. So one is to prepare. Obviously, Netta talked about how to prepare. Read over your stuff. Don't just think you can show up for a call and think you can handle it. Preparation is the number one thing you can do. Two is practice. And for me, I will set up my screens and run fake Zoom calls with myself just to make sure I know what screens are up and what's working. And so I'm set and good to go. I go in with rules that I want for myself. So I can go in and say, look, if we're going to draft anything together online, that's fine. But no matter what, I'm not agreeing to anything online until I get 5 minutes after the call to review it. Maybe I want to talk with my team. Set a rule that you're comfortable with that lets you feel okay with doing code drafting if it comes to it. Ask for time offline to review. And this echoes the last one, which is don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be afraid after the call to email the other side and say, hey, sorry, I forgot to bring this up during the call. Here's an item to discuss. Or say, hey, look, when I saw that item that we drafted online, it seemed okay, but after I looked at it again, maybe I have these other tweaks. Don't be too hard on yourself. We're all human. And those are some of the ways that I think we can get over some of those fears about negotiating over the phone, Zoom calls, or even code drafting.
Yeah, those are great techniques. I definitely don't think you're alone, Nate. And I was there too. There was a time that I was absolutely terrified to get on a live negotiation call, but practice, practice, practice. And you don't have to practice with an external party. You can practice with someone on your team, someone internal that you trust, a mentor, a manager, a colleague. You can practice together. I'm sure there's others that would like to practice the same skill. You can set up like a test Zoom call, share your screen, and just start getting used to the mechanics of screen sharing and pulling up documents. And I know it's like whenever someone's sitting over my shoulder and I'm typing, I keep having all these like typos, and I'm like, I swear I'm better at typing than this. But that's just nerves. And the more you do it, the more you realize like no one really cares if you have a typo. No one really cares if you had to backspace a couple more times than usual. And also like no one's going to judge you if you just say that you need time to review it and get back to them. Now, there are ways to say I don't know with confidence, and there's ways to say I don't know that can maybe allude to something that you don't want, which is to make you feel like you're not an expert, as much of an expert as you want to hold yourself out to be. So again, practice saying, I don't know with confidence. Oh, interesting question. Let me review internally and I'll get back to you on that. Another great response, if you don't have an answer, is to ask a question back. Oh, that's a really interesting approach. Can you help me understand if you've done this before? Can you help me understand why you did it this way instead of that way? And how would you feel if we were to come back like this? Would that be acceptable to you? Because I do have to bring it internally. And also you can bring up that you need to get something approved. Like that sounds okay to me, but I do have to run it by so-and-so,
I
and that,
also
Thank
that
you.
also builds trust, right? Like I think you're reasonable, but I'm not the decision maker. So I'll be right back.
I also love your tip about bringing in your stakeholders from your business. Either support me on this point. We need to impress on the other side that this is a really important point for us to get what we want here,
Yes.
and to set the rule for your internal team so they aren't showing up on the call and accepting everything before you have a chance to say, well, I don't know if we really want to go with unlimited liability here. So setting those rules up front can be helpful too.
Yes.
Thank you, Netta and Nate. And if I could pause you both momentarily, I'd love to cover that we did do a poll and we had really great results on that. So the topic of live negotiations and confidence, really great. Please do sync with Netta and Nate, follow them on LinkedIn. They are regularly sharing good tips on that. Let's go ahead and answer some questions here. We've been given some questions ahead of time, and I see some really good questions in the Q&A section. I would like to start off with the Oreo method, and some good questions are coming around the tokens, and how would you approve that if there is a limit on AI usage in the company's token policy? How do you recommend going around that with the Oreo policy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm hearing more about that some legal users are getting token limits. I don't currently have that experience. So I would say do your review in layers because the bigger of an ask you give to AI, the less accurate that it seems to be. And so I do still recommend trying to do, maybe you don't have a playbook, you can do general review and then the more surgical review, and then you can do your cleanup on your own. But again, you don't need, especially if you have tokens that are being tracked, you don't need to use AI for everything. Use it for the things that you actually need help with. Use it for the use cases that it will make you more efficient, not the use cases that it will make you less efficient. You're just going to be sitting there reprompting and telling AI, no, I didn't say that. I said to do it like this.
Right.
Like if you catch yourself doing that, don't use AI. Just default to your expertise.
And then I have a point to add. So this might be something that you and I can talk about and maybe on another webinar. But I look at your Oreo policy and I think of a cupcake approach where the first human review, could that be replaced with a really good playbook design? So you talked a lot about spending time on that playbook. Could over time, the very first human review that you considered, if you were very new to the AI redline, I can see doing that. But if somebody has a sophisticated tool and if they spend a lot of time, could the first cookie be replaced with a very good AI playbook?
Absolutely. If you're doing or building the playbook, then I do think that could be a substitute for the first review.
Excellent. And one of the questions that we had was how do we safeguard service provider liability who has built a SaaS over the stack of a third-party service provider? So if you are using an AI tool that's built kind of like a wrapper tool and somebody else's LLM, how are you safeguarding the provider liability in those contracts?
Nate, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it's one of the criteria we talked about for selecting a good AI vendor is to understand exactly that. What models are they using? Are they using one? Are they using more? And I like the idea of someone saying, think about when you see changes to Claude and ChatGPT. Is the vendor you're using, are they going to improve with that? Are they kind of, rising tides lift all boats, so to speak? Or is there going to be some degradation there or a loss? And I think that's really where you want to reach out to your vendor and understand how the underlying changes in those models flow down to the benefits you'll see in your product or your tool.
Yep. Great.
And finally, a really good question is what is the current thinking concerning who owns the outputs when using AI tools? Are you as a user company, are you owning the outputs or does the provider of the tool or does the end user, let's just say you have your company's doing this for a client, who owns that final output of the AI redline document?
So in terms of if I'm paying for a AI redlining tool and I'm the customer, the output would be owned by me, the customer. And the way I define output is that it's anything created from my input. And then
Yeah.
my input is any of my customer data that I flow into the tool.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah,
Any
input
thoughts
as
on that?
playbooks as well, if you're building off of that stuff too. I think this was one of the red lines that was at the Redline Rumble, actually, is making sure that the customer owns the output.
Excellent. Okay, and then if there are any other questions, please feel free to email them to us or reach out to Netta and Nate separately on LinkedIn. Do it publicly so we can all learn from it. I appreciate the time everybody has put into today's call and all the questions. Thank you so much, Netta and Nate, for your time today, for sharing your expertise on AI redlining and negotiations, and also encouraging people to do live negotiations. One of the topics that things that I always think of is like how you liked Nate mentioned about asking for a favor or opening up with a positive comment. I always like to tell people when I get on a call, we'd love to make this deal. We want this deal to happen. So I always open the call by saying that our intention isn't to just argue or win or lose. We want this deal to happen. How do we make this happen? So there are all these other things that we can think of to humanize the negotiation and take it to the next level. Whether we're using AI or not, at the end of the day, you're responsible for the contract and you're signing it. So I really enjoyed your program. I hope everybody else did as well. I love the comments that came in. I encourage everyone to again follow Nate and Netta and also register for our next webinar that's on Thursday, July 23rd. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. Hopefully you got the CLE codes. You will be receiving the certificate of attendance very soon. And if you have any other questions, please reach out to us at hello@contractnerds.com.
Thank you so much, everybody. And we're
Thank you.
looking forward to sharing our free companion resources. We put together a few example red lines and materials and prompts and lists and checklists for you all. So thank you all so much and really appreciate you having me on the show. Welcome again to Roma. Just so
you.
excited to have you here as the new head of Contract Nerds. It's wonderful to see you sparkling in green.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Roma. Thank you, Netta.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Stay nerdy and crush those contracts. I'll see you all next month.